Hey everybody, it's Heath here from Mother. Stuart Watkins. An honour. #1 podcast. You've heard me rattling on about I want to do a podcast for whatever. Finally.
It's time.
And
congratulations. Good to be here.
Thanks, man. And I'm so glad your #1 interview, you graced me with your one. And now you're up to what? Like a lot.
118 or something like that.
Stuart Watkins podcast. And man, congrats on that. What an epic podcast. You know, the thing I find about podcasting, I've been a big fan of podcasting for a long time. And, you know, there's a saying out there that you're the average of the 5 people you hang out with. You know, like, be very careful of who you're hanging out with because you're going to be like the sum average total of their pros and cons. Right. You know what I mean? And I think the beautiful thing about podcasting is, man, you can pull in a digital friend, right? Because it becomes like that, long-form conversations. I mean, you develop some sort of connection.
Big time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. And so grateful. I mean, it's become pretty common to bitch upon the internet for its vices and addictions and whatnot, but I'm so grateful that these connections that really wouldn't have happened without the internet. I'm grateful, but just gotta choose wisely, use it wisely.
Yeah, man, and a wise person never blames their tools too.
Right.
You know, because a lot of people are downing the tech for their inability to concentrate. Oh, they're so distracting, they're this and that. It's like, no, it's just a tool. If you can't discipline yourself to put it down and not to use it here and there, then that's the problem. But I'm with you. The benefits far outweigh that. I mean, the ability to connect now and to get so much information, to get these conversations out there, and I think it's a blessing because true podcasting is long-form conversation. And that's what we need nowadays, man. Everything is sound bits and very short, and you don't get the essence. You can't unpack things. So, yeah, I'm grateful. Totally. So, just for the people that don't know who you are, yoga teacher, author of this book, Being Yoga, man. What a great book.
Thank you.
Epic book. What else? You're a facilitator, so you helped create the Flow Festival with Amanda. Digital platform for enlightenment, really, all healthy living. Have I missed anything? Shaman, bit of a shaman.
A little bit. That's come into play a little bit. Yeah. Dad. And I think you wrapped it up. Thank you.
Student
yeah,
of
that's right.
Of self-mastery. And once again, this book, I think it's very essential for people to get because there's so much wisdom in there, man. But even just as a picture book, I mean, right. I know you've got multiple photographers in there, but
Andrew Kuipers is the one to thank for that. He's a dear friend. He used to live here. He moved to Melbourne, and he did the whole thing, really. He's to thank big time. And yeah, lots of photographers over the years, but he really did it. At first there were actually way more photos of me, and I'm like, no, we got to dial that down a bit.
Come on, man.
And there's still a lot in there, I know, but it was a journey, and my intention was to actually collaborate with these photographers and artists and Andy Kuipers to create kind of like an artistic journey, really, of these places and being with Ram Dass and so forth, rather than just reading the words, more of like slowing down a little beyond the analytical mind, more into a felt experience. So that was really the intention, to collaborate with these artists to create more of a vibratory feel as you flick through the pages rather than just thinking about the words, because talking about yoga and reading about it, it's pretty tricky. And with our academically conditioned minds, it's very seductive to really get it on an intellectual level and a conceptual level, but to really like grok with it and feel it and be it, it's a whole nother thing. We really gotta tune into that part of awareness, which goes beyond just reading and just talking about it, if that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense to me, and that's something I picked up going through it, is that for me, I feel with you, because you've been living this life a long time. You're super authentic about it. You embody it. And then you write this book. But I got the feeling so many times that it's like a frog trying to explain to a tadpole still in the water its experiences of being on land. You know what I mean? Like you've got this tadpole or a fish or something in the water, not knowing any other environment, not knowing any other reality, hasn't got a language or words for it. And then you have to have this frog has to now work out how it's going to translate the experiences in another world back to these people who haven't had it yet, you know. And I felt like the tadpole because I know you, man, and I know that this is all real for you. It's not like a pretend. I know I've met people that have written books, and it's like, man, you are not like that, you know. But you are, and you do manage to get that done in the book, of finding that language and distilling your experience, which can't be spoken of, and that's what we're saying. And I know you're. I mean, you've gone into a bit of a Zen study as well and things like that, and I think that's what probably pulls us to it, is that sometimes there's no words and you still have to communicate.
Yeah, there's Ao-Chen in particular, that direct path, direct teaching, cutting straight to the chase. Even though that's not a good way to put it, it does kind of, it's often referred to as like the quick path, which cuts through all the bullshit and all our tendencies to need to, again, get it on an analytical level. It can be tricky to penetrate those levels of the mind in our society. And we tend to get that when we do go on these exotic trips to these more transcendent places, but we can cultivate it right here in the noise and right here in the distractedness of our culture. It just takes, a discipline.
Yeah, it does. I've got a lot of questions. Your life story is pretty interesting. So, you, like me, came from a good family, but you still developed this, not so much angst, but this restlessness and you know, a bubbling up of some sort of rebellious feeling. And then by the age of 15, you're almost on your deathbed already.
Yeah.
What happened there?
Well, so I mean, I remember it vividly. At like 12, 13, I became obsessed with grunge and partying, and I really was compelled to just dive fully into that culture of really self-abuse, really. I can't find the word, but just like going hard on music, on drugs, on just exploration of consciousness. And I remember at 12 being excited for high school, to go to Mount Lawley High, which was just grungy and gnarly back then. And I could not wait to start partying and start going deep into skateboarding and deep into music. So I was actually looking forward to it in a weird way. I don't know what was compelling that, but probably, this rebellious thing brewing up in me. I just needed to rock and roll and shake off my conditioning, I think. And that's what happened. I mean, even though it was a little bit regretful how many drugs I was taking during those developmental years, you know. I mean, 12, 13, 14, 15 were like peak drug taking years of smoking weed all day, literally before school, during school, after school, before bed, and then come the weekend, like hard drugs. And I actually loved it. I looked forward to that next rave or that next underground thing, and went down a pretty bad, dark path, but I actually enjoyed it in a weird way. It was very transcendent, and the amount of people I met from all walks of life, and I learned a lot. I learned a lot of being with lots of gay people at the time, lots of older people, lots of lesbians, lots of just unique, out there people, and I found it to be very beneficial, but then it almost killed me, which was a blessing in disguise, because some people I was hanging out with then actually did die during that time, and then a little bit later. But at age 15, I had a really gnarly experience on this bad batch of ecstasy that was going around that apparently did kill some people. And it shook me big time at this rave, and I just lost all feeling of the body, got really cold sweats and foaming at the mouth, and most of the people with us were underage, so everyone was freaking out, not knowing what to do. And I just remember people giving me cigarettes and people giving me lollipops, and I felt like this is it, okay? And I just kind of relaxed into it eventually, and then I didn't die, and kind of slept it off for a couple months, just kind of shacked up in my dark room and slept it off. And my mum's so compassionate and understanding. She just beautifully gave me space to go through what I was going through and not invade and not like make me feel bad about it. I just kind of went through it. And it was like a cocoon. It was like an incubator in which I came out of it transformed. I came back to school, and I literally looked different. People didn't recognize me. I became obsessed with nutrition, became obsessed with health and fitness. I at the time, prior to all this, I had kind of long, dyed black hair. I was obsessed with 9-inch nails, so I went down that kind of Trent Reznor, Marilyn Manson path. And then during this real dark period of recalibrating and being grateful that I didn't die and finally getting some health back, went back to school eventually, got a haircut, started to get some color in my skin, and felt great, and just became obsessed with health and nutrition and wellness, which was that next chapter of my life.
And so that's at the age of 15, 16. And then you didn't really waver from that point on, really, did you?
Nah, it
challenges, yes, but
it shook me so deeply, and it was such a true like near-death experience of like you got a second chance here, and it really, in retrospect, it did shake off a lot of conditioning that I think on an unconscious level I was kind of looking forward to doing. Like, let's just go hard, kind of like a deep trip in the jungle with jungle medicine, just like, okay, let's go deep. But I didn't know it at the time, of course. But in retrospect, that's kind of what happened. I just like shook everything off, and now time to really go for it.
Yeah, and I know it's part of your teachings, and you've had some amazing teachers, which I want to ask you about. You know, how important is it to have a guru or a teacher? But it seems to be that's how you approach a lot of obstacles in your way. Is like you've just gathered the learning from it and then let everything else fall away. Because I know one of the sayings that come up through your teaching stuff is the sandpaper,
right?
And things
spiritual
like this.
Sandpaper.
Yeah.
Those challenges. I mean, as shit as they are, and as much as we'd rather them not be there, they do tend to serve as a kind of spiritual sandpaper. And Ram Dass, being my core teacher, and his guru Maharaji Neem Karoli Baba, would often say, "Suffering is grace," and it's gnarly to really think about it on the surface level. Again, especially in our kind of culture where we can tend to craft a week with pretty minimal suffering and maybe not even see much suffering. And then that part of life can easily get kind of pushed aside under these kind of cloaks of denial and ignorance. So cultivating the ability to really sit in the fire of challenge is such a skill, and so helpful, because life is beautiful, but like we're seeing a lot right now on a collective level, on a world level, there's a lot of suffering, and we need tools to deal with these coping mechanisms. We need them really to wake up during this time, rather than just becoming a zombie to the phone, which is becoming more and more prevalent. Over drinking, which apparently has gone through the roof. People's coping mechanisms could probably do with a little bit of an upgrade on a collective level, you know?
Yeah, I think that's the key for like a lot of health too, and it's another part of this philosophy of just letting things go and letting it all burn up in the fire that don't serve us.
Yeah.
But it's saying that's so easy, but like how do you sit in the fire without wanting to run back to one of our addictions, you know, like eating the shit food or, you know, smoking or back onto the coffee again or whatever. And none of that's a problem if it's only if you're controlling it.
Yeah.
But what we're talking about right now is like, okay, we've got this neurosis or something, faulty ways of thinking that we have to get rid of. How do you sit in the fire, man?
It's an interesting one because I think it is different for everyone. It can be really tricky to navigate, and like I'm thinking of my dad, for example, in which he nearly just died from pneumonia not too long ago, and came out of it very inspired to lose a whole lot of weight and finally get healthy and take control of his health and whatnot. But observing him and just being with him, I can see how challenging it really can be to make transformational change and to really sit in these addictions and fears. And I have much more patience and compassion for people that are having trouble creating those more positive changes in their life, because it can be challenging. It can be scary. It's almost like easier to not change. You know, in yoga methodology, they're called samskaras, these like grooves in the mind that form a habit, that form a perception, and it's kind of easier to just stay in that groove. So to interrupt that cycle, interrupt that loop, just that in itself is very uncomfortable. Gets people very, like, even temperature shifts and brings up anxieties. So really, we need a practice. We need, whether it's a yoga practice or a qigong practice or a martial arts practice, something that really on a regular basis helps us pay attention and cultivate a resilience and a wisdom, a clarity, to be able to tease apart the kind of thickness of the challenge or the thickness of an addiction, in which we can go beyond it, see a bigger vision. That's why one of the reasons I love fasting, and why fasting is so common in religions around the world and spiritual practices around the world. One of the purposes of it is to like learn to be with the hunger, and not be so impulsive to that hunger, and kind of see what's on the other side of the hunger. Same thing with our anger, with our discomfort, with our irritability. We can learn to be less reactive and give it a bit more space. And with practice, when we persevere with the practices, not just once, twice, but like again and again for weeks, for months, for years, we cultivate that ability to sit with the discomfort, to sit in the fire. And again, grateful for my teacher Ram Dass. That was a big part of his narrative of like, you know, if you're hating where you're at, I mean, you could go and escape. Go to that next location and escape the challenge at hand. You could. Or you can burn up a shitload of karma right now and just sit in that fire and grow. And it's a fierce path, but if you want to grow a shitload in this lifetime and burn up a whole lot of karma, or whatever way we want to look at it, that's a great way to do it.
Because it will change. It's not as if, hey, you have to sit in the fire for eternity. It's gonna burn off the dross, and then you'll be liberated, free, transformed a little bit more.
Yeah. It's kind of like, do we want the candy bar now, that kind of quick dopamine hit, that quick fix, that quick bit of distraction, or are we willing to endure a little bit of discomfort and then feel much more free and wise and in our heart?
Yeah. And I was listening to one of your podcasts with the SAS dude, the soldier guy, and it's probably about, I don't know, it's probably about 7 back or something. But he said something interesting that I picked up on, and it was a difference between needs and likes. Yeah. Talking about addictions and things like this, and he was citing some research that had gone into it and identified that the needs, I have to have this, that addictive type thing is very dopamine based, and the likes are very much serotonin and everything else, but very, very like separated on a neurochemical level even. I think that's pretty important too, to really surrender that neediness for things.
Yeah.
But the takeaway I get, because you got a structure, you've built a structure, you've built a practice, you got a nighttime practice, a wake up in the morning practice, and things like this. So this structure goes a long way with helping.
Yeah, I mean, since having kids, the structure's become a little looser in a way, but kind of continuous as well. Just little rituals, little habits to bring in when we wake up, little habits to bring in when we go to sleep.
How do you start your day? I mean, kids, okay, they're gonna rock the boat. I get it.
Oh, big time.
But
we've been sleeping very little lately as we try to change a few cycles, and that does have an impact. Waking up sluggish, it makes it harder for sure. But there's little things, little hacks we could call it. That's a bit of a catchphrase going on right now that can really help reboot in a way. So first thing I do is just breathing attentively. Slow nose breaths, at least. Sometimes not many, if there's shit to be done straight away. I'm not going to put my hand in my kid's face and say, go away, I got my breath work to do. It's not like that anymore. It's like a few breaths. And then I do love a cold shower. We've got that cold pool right there. I jump in that pool regularly. It stays very cold. I do really appreciate that. And I find that cold shower or cold plunge is great training. It's not comfortable. So that right away is a daily practice of being in the discomfort, but finding that it wakes me up and creates clarity. I feel it strengthens my immune system, so I continue the nose breathing as I just kind of sit in the pool or in the shower. Find that great. So they're kind of staples, just breathing attentively, the cold, heaps of water.
Yeah, water. I think cold showering is the most underutilized tool that we've got. I remember when I was going through a hard patch mentally, not that long ago actually, but I was becoming a bit negative and this and that, and it starts to compile, And then I remembered cold shower, the power of it, and right there and then I just left the room and just had a cold shower. And this was in winter, so it was pretty cold anyway, and had to endure that 40 seconds of and then transformation. After that, my mind changed, I changed, whole personality changed because of that simple cold shower and what it does. And man, you can to know that we've got that at our fingertips.
Yeah.
But people, the discomfort, and people also not doing it with an awareness of what's actually, how do you feel before and after. Right. Powerful tool.
Yeah, so that, and then some lemon water or apple cider vinegar and water, something to just create that alkalizing, cleansing effect. And then the rest is kind of going with the flow. I'll sometimes do a bit of breath work, maybe a bit of work with the didge. I find that very powerful. All kinds of different exercises. It's not always asana on the mat, but I do try to sit in the asana, like meditation, every day. And it's sporadic throughout the whole day. Sometimes just a couple minutes in the morning. Sometimes I get quite a bit of time before the girls wake up and we're kind of into action, and I'll sit there for half an hour sometimes. I find that precious with the sun rising. That's a great time. And then before bed, I do the same thing. I know you asked me what do I do when I first wake up. And yeah, that's kind of it. I've I used to have much more linear kind of structure. Like before I had kids and all that, it was easier to have my game plan and then just do it.
But I love this because it's simple and it's only a few things, and that's what happens when you've done 10, 20 plus years like you of the practice. It doesn't mean it gets more complicated as you go on. It gets simpler.
Totally.
And like your book is being yoga, and you're living it throughout the day. So you don't have to do an hour and a half of this and that. It's finding those moments through the day, and how important is just finding stillness and quiet, because that's something that people can't handle and they freak out about, but it is an essential ingredient of progress.
Definitely. So important. I mean, again, we've never been faced with so many distractions and energy-sucking mechanisms, and really that stillness feels to me like the antidote, like the superpower that we can tap into to help us penetrate all this noise and distraction and find the tranquility that we're all trying to get somehow, by finally achieving what we've been working for and then finally resting. We can do that just by cultivating stillness every day. And I think one of the bigger hurdles when people are beginning to try to find stillness and meditate is that they're really wanting the mind to be completely still straight away. And it is uncomfortable facing every thought coming in and out of the mind, and just to sit with it. And again, gradually you tease apart the noise and you're more able to just let go into the stillness. And then it's so beneficial. And then we can go through the day less shaken up by life.
Yeah, and I think the biggest problem is that people don't know the difference between the mind and awareness. I've been following Dandapani, this Hindu monk, he's got a great meditation course and things like that. And he sets up really early the definitions and describes the mind like a landscape or like a house with many rooms in it. It doesn't move. One room sadness, one room happiness, one room excitement, one room jealousy, whatever. But he says what we are is like an orb of light, awareness, pure awareness. And we can control where that moves, and we can move it from this room to that room or whatever. But the problem is awareness is energy, and wherever energy constantly flows, it sets up a magnetism. And so if you're always taking your awareness into that room of anger or irritation, always, it's magnetic, and then it becomes very hard to leave that room. So people will sit and they go, okay, let me try stillness, let me try and sit. Boom, their awareness goes straight into these negative rooms, and they go, this sucks, and I can't, you know what I mean? I think it's so freeing if, like I said, I read in your book so many times, loving awareness, we are loving awareness, that's what we are. And I thought, man, that is handy to remember that, because we're not the mind, we're not the body, we are pure loving awareness. And when we realize that, we can actually control where the awareness goes. Don't like where you are, well, bring your awareness to the breath. Just start with that. I know you break through a lot of these blocks with breath work and sound, which I found interesting.
Yeah, that's been huge for me, no doubt. So most people would have heard of like sound healing by now, in which we go to someone to be blasted with beautiful sound, which is great. But we can also do it ourselves. And from what I've observed in myself over the years and just so many different students, is through poor breathing, like real shallow breathing, and also like there's a common blockage right in the upper belly and right in the throat, and with that we just become very stagnant. And I've found we can break through that really fucking quick with sound. Like, think of sounds that we do when we're in insight, when we have an insight. We do something like aha, aha. So we can like recall that and do it on repeat. Aha, aha. And it frees up this tension right in here. It revitalizes the kidneys and adrenals. It opens up the heart, inevitably opens up the throat. It's like decongesting. You know, when you spit out a whole lot of mucus or phlegm or something, it's like doing that again and again and again on a physical level, on a psychological level, on an energetic level. It's combining the breath work with sound, and it really can wake us up super quick.
Yes.
And there's mantras like, I know many yogis who their primary practice is just mantra repetition. Same thing, creating these vibrations of sound that wake us up beyond those layers of the mind into our true nature, our true awareness.
Yeah, and this is what excites me because now we're getting the Western science to back all this thousands and thousands of year old stuff, and with chanting or humming, the research was done on humming, released heaps of nitric oxide from the upper nasal pharynx area. Cool. So nitric oxide is the major mediator of the immune system, and it's a dilating agent. It's so powerful. And chanting was also found, they did research on Om Mani Padme Hum, Buddhist one, but the phrasing was perfect for bringing the vagus nerve into alignment, you know. So yeah, it's just, there's so many tools available. But one of my first really trippy experiences in yoga was in your class, and this is a long time ago. It was a bit of a yin thing. So we're sitting into something, and I was very tight. And then you got us all to like hum or hit some sound into the tightness. And I couldn't believe how that just dropped me in.
Big time.
Huge. Just sending that awareness with that vibration, sending that awareness riding on the back of that vibration into the stuckness. That was the only tool that was going to get through that gateless gate. You know what I mean? And It was beautiful that we had these tools available to us. I didn't need someone to push me through it. I didn't need a drug. I didn't need a vitamin. Just sound, Nada Brahma. Yeah,
Brahmari Pranayam. It's so powerful. I remember when I first got taught it in India, it would have been 2008. And at that time, I actually was pretty resistant to all this stuff. I had my yoga practice, but it was quite just physical. And all mantra and that I was still pretty uptight about and adverse to it. And then this one exercise Vishwaji had us doing, of just doing the Brahmari Pranayam with eyes closed, ears blocked, humming over and over and over again for about half an hour. And it was a psychedelic experience. It was a complete trippy, heart-opening, blissful experience. I felt like my body just melted all tension. And it was a huge breakthrough of like, holy shit, we can combine, you know, the stretch, the asana, whatever it may be, and this is credit to Vishwaji as well, because that was a big part of how he taught, was we can combine it all. And then the posture becomes like a vehicle, a like magnifying glass to then get the sound into particular spots of tension, particular resistance in the mind. And that's another tool to help us sit with the fire, which we were talking about before. You can use sound and kind of express and release, and not denying that it's uncomfortable, not denying the negativity, and give it sound. Like even if we're really angry and frustrated and pent up with sadness, we like we all know after a good cry, it's like such therapy. We can learn to express and release. If you're angry, like give that sound, anger, and you can penetrate the tension, burn it in the fire of your attention, and let it go.
So important, because we embody these negative emotions, don't we? They get trapped in the body.
Yeah.
I don't know if we know how it happens, but I know it happens. And to mobilize that emotion, get it out, that's kind of how you do it. Like Osho had that, what was it, dynamic meditation or something?
Similar
thing. I did that twice, I think, and it was profound. When you, I think it was 5 minutes or something, you just had this scream, and people would be swearing and just yelling, fuck. It was kind of madhouse.
It can be.
But if you surrendered to it and just give the process a go, at the end of it, because in the last 5-10 minutes were just stillness. And I found, like everyone, that's the purpose of it, was if you go through that 5-10 minutes of the screaming, get the madness out, the next 5-10 minutes of stillness was easy. And then all of a sudden, you can really connect to the source and deeper. And I know when I read in your book, you were saying that the stillness, when you in your journey, you started to get more stillness and more silence in your mind. All of a sudden, then you could hear your teachers.
Right.
And that was profound for me when you heard that, because everyone talks about the knowledge is inside, and there's this non-locality of wisdom, but you do have to be able to hear it.
Yeah.
You've got to get still.
Totally. Yeah, I can recall a few teachers in which I couldn't hear their wisdom. There's even some where the way they taught irritated me at a time, and then they became my favorite teachers. So it's quite interesting, again, that what we like and dislike. And we tend to lean to really what's feeding our familiar patterns. When I look back to these fierce teachers that just spoke in a way, really, when I look back, that was triggering me, which is good, but it didn't feel good. So my instant thing was, I don't like this class. I'll go to something I like more. And then a couple of years went down the track and met up with them again, and just loved their teaching. Like, I could finally hear it. But that initial trigger was so seductive in not going back to them because I didn't like it. They triggered me. But it was really, they were just pointing to something in me that needed tending to. So that it's quite interesting in that way. Without having a check-in, like master teacher to check in with, to call us out on our deceptions and bullcrap, it's pretty hard to do ourselves. It takes really deep accountability and subtle discernment to see if we're truly, if like our gut is saying, nah, get out of this place, like they're talking crap, get out of here, or if it's just simply triggering you because they're honing in on some work that needs to be done.
Yeah. I was always a bit of a lone wolf in my journey, and I'd never join groups, I'd never want teachers or things like that. And I'm really getting to the point now, I see the value in it. Like, I start to realize that if you're lucky enough to have a teacher or a guru or something like that, that is a blessing.
It is. I mean, I get the path of not wanting a teacher, and that was the majority of my life for sure, until I met Ram Dass. Before that, I had lots of great teachers that would kind of come and go, but not really have like a anchoring role in my life like he has. But so I get that, and I think it's good for the most part, tuning into our own wisdom, and we've got so many different disciplines available for us now. I mean, it wasn't the case not too long ago. We kind of needed to have that one teacher or needed to go on big pilgrimages to get the teaching and finally visit the teacher. Now we kind of can dip our toes in a whole lot of different teachings and be a lone wolf, and it's great. At the same, like, you're a wise man and you're disciplined and you've got that subtle discernment. It can be tricky when you don't have that. It can be confusing because there's just so much available now. So many podcasts, so many apps, so many teaching modules. And I hear it from students, or like younger students or newer students. It be really confusing. Even just with yoga alone, there's so many different styles. So you got to really dive in and explore, like, what is it you want to cultivate from it. It's everyone's journey in themselves.
Yeah, and for me, what this podcast is about is like health mastery, right? Which you could say is self-mastery. I don't see the difference. But what I do know is a definition of mastery, and that is just doing the fundamental basics perfectly well. You know, not something esoteric or really tricky or trippy, but just doing the basics. And I think a lot of us don't want to keep practicing the basics over and over again because we want something shinier or more interesting, or there's got to be a faster way, there's got to be a better way. And with self-development, dare I say, with our spirituality, there is no fast way, is there? It's just you got to show up every day and just keep doing the basics. Keep doing the basics, and then put yourself in the fire and
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I agree. But since exploring Zhao Chen and even Locke Kelly's effortless mindfulness, and with Lama Surya Das of Zhao Chen, it is all here now.
Yes.
That is, but it's paradoxical. It's like it is here now. There's nothing really to do or to fix. This awake awareness is right here. Let's get out of our own way and be it. At the same time, we can't get ahead of ourselves. There's also work to be done to clear the veils and to purify the mind and to clear the way to truly embody that. Again, it's one thing to conceptually get it, but to rest in that awareness, it's a whole nother thing.
Yeah, and I get that. And that's like the whole Zen thing too, like either like instant awareness or the long journey or whatever.
Right.
And I get it, and I know it's true. But I've met so many people that are pretending that they're there.
Right.
And they don't seem to be in on the secret that they're not. You know what I mean? It's like, you're saying all the right things, man, but like it's just not authentic. It's not real. You're pretending stuff, and so I guess that's what like made me very wary of groups. I saw that even though the group had value, people would join them and then just turn into humans again, and just there'd be pecking orders and there'd be politics in this group,
sure.
and then I saw that their methodology that they're so invested in on a identity level became a drug to them now. That was their drug. That like, no, I've already done my spiritual work. I'm done it because I'm with this group. And but then I'd see, man, you look just as fucked up as me. I can see your anger issues and this and that. Not that they're going to go away, mind you, but you definitely don't seem to be acknowledging them or. So you know, but so I see the benefits but I just see the connection that you've got, you had with Ram Dass and a couple of the other teachers, and it was like, well, that's real, and that's great, and it must give you some power or something.
It gives me, I mean, for one, I'm grateful. I'm grateful that I felt attracted to Ram Dass and those teachings, and then got immersed in that community where there's a lot of elders that have been doing these practices for decades and being in that community in such a healthy way for decades. And it's just so authentic. That's the feeling I get from it. There's no pretentious kind of hiding of one's humanness. That's what even with Ram Dass until his last day, even though he's referred to as Baba Ram Dass as really a saint and a very enlightened being, he was just like you and I, and just funny and a little rascal, and that was part of, I think, the draw to him was his ability to be very candid about his human experience and not pretend he's this holier than thou master teacher. He was the first to admit of his quirks and his flaws and his neuroses, and similar with Lama Surya Das and Krishna Das. That whole crew, very humble, very, if anything, the whole community wants to put them up on pedestals as like the one, and create maybe a bit of a cult thing around it. But in my opinion, a great teacher keeps smashing away that pedestal and is really primarily like a great friend. You know, like a great friend that just tells you how it is. Yeah.
But there's got to be, there must be some sort of transmission. And here's the value of, like we said right at the start, you know, you are the average of the 5 people you hang out with most. So be very careful of who you're spending a lot of time with. Because there is a transmission, there's entanglement, there's entrainment, these things happen.
True.
And so with an amazing teacher and community like you've had, there's got to be some sort of transmission that just seeps into your personality.
Yeah, no doubt. And I'm so grateful for those times on Maui with him and that crew. Blissful times, you know, whether it's swimming in the ocean or chanting, or he married Joe and I, which was powerful. And it does feel like it's in my blood, it's in my energy, it's really here to stay, which I'm really grateful for. It doesn't feel like I'm clinging to it, like kind of dwelling on the past, like the heyday. This feels like the heyday, even though we're in crazy times. The Joe and I often like have a giggle, like these are the golden years, you know. This is the heyday, even though it's like crazy right now.
2020, man, the COVID heydays, beautiful.
It's crazy, but like it's a powerful time we're in, and it's so uncertain. It's so
but
crazy.
it is illusionary at the same time, isn't it? The inner work, it's to a certain extent that external environment is the show, but the inner world, isn't it? So yeah, I can imagine this transmission is real. It's great, and now you're embodying it. Ram Dass, to one extent, is not on the planet, but something is still living. This, you know, Jolte say Jolte, you know, light my candle with your candle. Now it lives within you, and that transmission is possible through you and his other people that hung with him so much. So I mean, that's what community is, so strong, isn't it? We've got to. And I guess that's why, like, you know, the sum of the five people, I love what you've done. You've got an amazing podcast, which everyone should listen to. Now you've got another one going with Joe, which is for anyone that needs a practice. You've got it covered. You've got everything from philosophy in there to all the practices. And so you've got a community there. All people have to do is just download an app. I mean, these things are leaving minimal excuses for people not to pull out of the rat race, pull out of the illusion, because everyone is just getting programmed with this illusion that's not happening, really. So
it's very interesting times, and like we were talking about before with these phones, can be an incredible tool. We can feed the mind so much incredible wisdom right now, and we've got it all at our fingertips, but it's equally seductive to go down really crazy rabbit holes right now. And I know dear friends that would be in my top 5 of people to hang out with that have over the last few months been sucked down these very toxic rabbit holes in which admittedly they're now like going to bed not showered after a big day of work and just on their phone, transfixed on the news, and which is all fine. It's good to be up to date on, you know, these world issues, but it's you got that lens of discernment seems so crucial right now to stay well, to stay sane.
In heart math terms, I don't know if you're familiar with heart math, but beautiful stuff. They say overcare. That's overcare, and that's not helpful. Hey, let's talk about some health tips. So. Routine's a big one. What are some other tools that you've brought into your life that have been transformative on health? Something really good.
So the cold plunge is key. I do have a little routine that I like to do each morning that I find really beneficial. It's a combination of the cold plunge, oil pulling, followed by the gel neti. Do you know gel neti? Like, it's a neti pot of saline solution that you put in one nostril, out the other.
Great.
So I like to do that, and then the tongue scraping after the oil pulling, and the head just feels light and clear. So after that, the breath work, meditation, sound, and it just sets the mind and head up to feel light and decongested. That really does feel key. That little, it's become like brushing the teeth. A little bit longer, you know, from that couple minutes of brushing the teeth to like 10 minutes. The oil pulling, the cold shower or the cold plunge, the scraping, the gel neti. It's become pretty routine. It can be done in 10 minutes, which I love to do. Sleep, even though I'm not sleeping at my best right now because of our 2-year-old that just loves breastfeeding, and we're trying to work that whole situation out. Sleep is up there as crucial. Being discerning, and we've talked about this before, of the phone. Like, ideally, don't have the phone in the room. Turn it off a good at least 20 minutes before going to sleep. Get the room dark. A little bit to set up the mind and body for sleep. So like a bit of sound work, even just sitting there and humming for 2 minutes can clear the mind and get the energy really relaxed, get us into the parasympathetic nervous system and prepare us for a beautiful sleep. So setting up optimally for sleep. Sleep is beautiful, and we can even evolve that into bringing our yoga into our sleep, like yogic dreaming, check that out, or Tibetan yoga dreaming, and really have value of our sleep and our dreams. So preparation for awesome sleep, preparation for an awesome day. What do we do when we first wake up? Those staples of what I just talked about feel like great introductions into an awesome day to get the mind alert and sharp and relaxed, and the nervous system as well. And then preparation for a great sleep, and then gradually all those little things can kind of weave in to a great day.
Yeah, perfect. I love it because they're simple little things that don't take a lot of time, but they're so profoundly powerful. I find when people are in a rut, you get up, a lot of people get up, the first thing in their mind is coffee. Right. Yeah. And so they're chasing the bus straight away. They feel like they're always running late. Whereas, like you said, if you can just take 2 minutes even to do your breath work, change the state of your mind, and man, that cold shower, if I was to set anyone a challenge for 5 days, if you could just wake up, 2 minutes of breath work and a cold shower, and then go from there, man, I reckon that would have profound impact.
And of course, we can create more time in the day. I like to, at least once a week, have a good sweat, hit a sauna, sometimes do a niacin flush with that, take some niacin and just sweat it out while stretching. I find that really good when I can, once a week, twice a week sometimes. I do like to exhaust myself regularly, whether it's an exhausting yoga practice or a big bike ride, or I take Lani, for 2-year-old, for long walks. I do like movement. I think we need to move. I mean, evolutionary, we're used to moving a lot. Most of us are anyway. So it's good to move. We've been talking a lot about the value of stillness, but I equally value a good amount of exercise. Just get moving. It doesn't have to be vinyasa flow on the sticky mat. It really can be anything. I do see a lot of tight people, so stretching is beneficial. If you can't sit easefully and still, it's probably beneficial to have a regular stretch and relieve that tension.
Great, perfect. I love it. And then on top of that, you've got your diet down. I mean, you've been studying nutrition for a long time. And everything else. I mean, you're a holistic health coach, I guess.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, I guess that was my role before yoga. Like, went from the personal training thing, in which I was seeing a lot of gaps in the whole personal training scene, which then became more of like a holistic coach, which then, when I found yoga, it was just so all-encompassing. When you're truly practicing yoga, it really does bring it all in.
Yes. Hey, tell me, why do we find it so difficult to look into each other's eyes? I'm not talking about you and me. But I know you talk about it in your book too, eye gazing or soul gazing. Yeah. I remember the first time I did that in some workshop, it was profoundly difficult and really psychedelic. Someone you'd never met before, you're looking into their eyes and they're either crying or you're crying, and then you go, then they change into your Auntie Betty or someone like that or whatever. And then you someone else and they're like, oh my God, you're my mother, but in a different face. And it's have you any idea what's going on with the eye gazing?
I know a little bit. And I've done it so many times, and I bring it into a lot of the longer format workshops that I do because it is so profound. And I get a feeling that it's like the thinnest gateway, so to speak, or veil into our soul. Like, it's often called soul gazing. And it's a bit of a cliche of like eyes are the windows to the soul, and it really does feel like that. Like you kind of go beyond this tendency to judge on appearance and role and all of this surface shit. when you spend even just a minute gazing into someone's eye, that all drops away. The immediate challenge of it, if we're not used to it, is really just from our conditioning. We're so used to treading on the superficial surface of life of, I'm in my role, you're in your role, we're separate, we either like each other or we don't, we either are symbiotic together or not, and like there's really that relationship which is predominant in our culture, isn't it? Yeah. And then you sit down, not even talking, nothing in your hands, just full attention into the eye. And it's really intimate. Like, I often get people to share in the group classes when we have time afterwards, and often people share that that's the most intimate they've ever been with anyone, and often that's with a stranger. Don't know your name, don't know your job, don't know how much money, don't know anything about you. All I know is I had this deep experience and I'm in love with you. Like, and the sharing is of like a deep love, a deep mutual respect that, and then often deep lifelong relationships are actually cultivated from that, of just cutting through the layers of our treading on the surface of life. Did you ask why is it challenging?
No, you've answered it.
Yeah.
I just find it such an interesting thing. It's like the elephant in the room for a lot of people too. Like if someone's lying, they're not going to look you in the eyes, or if so, but like you just can't hide when someone's looking straight in your eyes, and I find that's interesting to contemplate. It is a window, and also the fact physiologically, it's the only part of the brain we can see. It's a part of the brain.
Yes,
it's the extension of the brain. So we're actually looking into the brain, and
into the brain.
Yeah. So you're actually looking into, and you can't hide. So, and that's why I think a lot of people find it so uncomfortable, because we're all of us have got these veils coming down, and we're playing these characters because we think that's how we're gonna survive. We have to be this character, and then most of it's set from the age of 2 to 4 years of age. Well, you got to be the funny. When I made someone laugh, everyone loved me, and I felt safe in the tribe. So I guess I'm the funny guy, and you got to, you know what I mean? Quite often the funniest people I've met are the saddest on another day. Mm-hmm. I used to live with a couple of clowns. Literally, they were, both of them were depressed.
Right.
So it's
often are, and
But the eye gazing, I find it's interesting, and if when we start to connect with each other and talk with each other, we can actually look into their eyes, we're gonna start to evolve more. And then you look at the other side of the spectrum with autism. It's the first thing they can't do is no eye contact. Right. There's a disconnect and a breakdown. So, and I think our culture is in danger of moving into more of an autistic spectrum as a whole.
I agree. I was teaching a class, it's a newer class, the other night, and half the room was unable to maintain eye contact. And it's just quite interesting. Like, it's a beautiful, as a teacher, it's really cool making eye contact with people, like in the opening discussion or the end discussion. About half the room, and it was a pretty busy room, 30 people in there or something like that. For the size of the room, it was pretty full. And half the room was unable to I could tell they weren't paying any attention. And they were looking at their smartwatches. So their phone was off, but then they've got their smartwatch. And it was a bit of a concerning moment similar to that. It feels like it's becoming like a pathology, this inability just to pay attention. Had similar experiences at like a dinner catch-up with friends, and most of the close friends, like, we put our phone away when we're going to have dinner with people. But this particular catch-up, half the table, maybe not quite half the table, but a bunch of people at the table weren't interacting with one another. They're on their phones, which is quite interesting, because it's one of the most beautiful things to catch up with actual people and make actual eye contact have an actual conversation. That's one thing I love about podcasts as well, like doing them and putting the phone away and just actually connecting. I do agree. I think if we're not careful and smart with our choices of what we do with our attention, it could lead into a lot like, autism could just become like normalized, which...
Yeah, disconnect. And that's, one of the things in the course that I'm running out here with the Mother Health School is really the first lesson is philosophy, right? And an exploration of what health is. And we're running with the definition of health is the freedom of expression on a physical, emotional, mental, social, and spiritual level. You need all of those 5 spokes, can't leave one out or else, they're all interconnected basically. And on a social level, we don't really pay homage to it.
Right.
And the connection begins with eye contact and rapport building. And I'm finding that I'm especially seeing it a lot in the young kids. They're losing the skill of being able to find rapport, not looking at people in the eye. And I think, and it's becoming acceptable. I think there's a lost generation of parenting. And I think that's going to be at our peril for the future if we don't sort of talk about it.
Yeah, agreed. It's the simple things. Get your kids out in the sunshine, get their feet on the earth, get them actually... and I mean, in some parts of the world, a lot of people haven't had much choice with extended lockdown. I think that's really taken a toll and taken what we're talking about to another level. It does seem like this year in particular, a lot of those pathologies and dysfunctions and disconnects have really been amplified to another level, huh?
Yeah, it's all coming out on the table.
Yeah, so I really hope it's like coming to the surface. And, documentaries like the Social Dilemma.
Yes.
And there's a lot, like Joe Rogan's getting a lot of great guests on that are talking about it very intelligently, scientifically. So it's out there. People are talking about it, which is good. That gives me hope, huh?
I think so. And I think it's like we've been talking about this whole conversation is the journey is having all this sort of dross bubbling up to the surface and then moving through it.
That's right.
You got a great quote in your book. I forget by who, but they're talking about composting and how like the waste products they're not waste. You put that compost back into the garden and it becomes a lettuce. It's all put back in. But
grist for the mill is
grist
often,
for the mill.
Yeah,
yes.
like all of life's challenges are grist for the mill. That kind of manure of life, that spiritual sandpaper again.
Yeah, move through it.
Yeah,
use it. Hey. Feet, bare feet.
Yeah.
You're one of the first guys I remember seeing walking around with your earthing shoes.
Yeah, people still look at them and freak out.
Yeah, yeah. As a yoga teacher, understanding that the fascia that begins under the feet connects and runs all the way up to the top of your head, and also just the metaphor of your feet connecting to this earth on an energetic level and things like that. How important is it to liberate the feet?
So important. And I mean, that would be, if you gave me a top 10 list of things to do, foot care would be up there as well. Like even just rolling the feet out on a ball, rolling that fascia out is really powerful in releasing the entire body. I really do feel that. And when you can sensitize to those bundles of tension in the feet, and when the fascia is overly contracted, when you roll that out, it really does help the whole body relax. And getting the feet on the earth, I mean, for sure, without a doubt, we're so similar to plants, really. And I can feel it on an intuitive level, on an energetic level, and it's cool now that it's become a bit of a biohack, just to and scientifically backed, getting a lot more people interested in the benefits of just getting out of your shoes, get your feet on the earth.
Getting earthing. Now it's the science is out there that it's anti-inflammatory. We know it's an anti-inflammatory. In the Tour de France, the Americans, a number of races back, they did a study on earthing with the injuries and things like that. Profound healing by just simply earthing out.
Interesting.
So foot care, because it's all about these energies that we can't see generally we can't feel, so we tend to ignore them. But now it's at our peril because, like blue blocking glasses, you're sponsored by Baxter. Very cool glasses, blocking the blue light. Only after the sun goes down is all you need it. But I mean, the effect of blue light on your melatonin and your circadian rhythms, this is massive.
Massive. So yeah, I do all that stuff, as you know, and I guess you got to pick your priorities, because I think to some people, all of it just seems too much, and they end up doing nothing.
Exactly.
So like the barefoot, it can all just seem like a huge list. Yet you just get interested in it, don't you? It becomes a part of your life. If you really do want to thrive, you kind of got to adapt these things to be in the modern day.
I think so, because it's lifestyle based. It's all lifestyle. It's pretty easy to throw on a pair of glasses, but why don't we? And we don't for interesting reasons when you reflect on it. And this is why, once again, it's so important to have those 5 friends that are positive people into health.
Yeah, what are you talking
because
about?
Because then when your friends start doing it, after the months and months and months, generally not straight away, you go, oh, well, I'll do it. I might do it too. And then you start to experience, because I mean, right now, I've put it away, but I've got a tri-field meter that measures EMFs, magnetic radiation, and and so forth. And I got it out the other day, and I put it over my iPad, and it was. I couldn't believe the needle was going off.
Right.
The amount of radiation coming from this iPad. And once again, I got pulled back to realizing that, there's this invisible world of dirty electricity and dirty radiation that's coming into us and having massive impact. And just because we can't see it, can't feel it. But then when you start to have these interventions like the blue blocking glasses, or you start to earth out, you do that for not long, all of a sudden then you feel it. You know what I mean? Like then all of a sudden you take these glasses off and look at these screens after hours and you get a bit of a headache, or all of a sudden you know what it's like to be running at the earth resonance, and then you spend a lot of hours on your iPad or something which is radiating, and all of a sudden it's like, wow, can I feel a certain numbness in my, you know what I mean? So it's interesting. It's almost like a leap of faith first, and it's so important, I think, that we join communities. If you've got no friends in your life that are into health and all of that, and there's a lot of people out there that are not into health or not interested, and that's cool. But I would say then join your community. Watch the podcast here. Just join digital communities, because it's a not a bad option for getting involved and learning ideas and getting entrained into a healthier way.
Yeah, and I've definitely had a time in my life where I had to end certain friendships. When I was talking about that time at 15, that whole group, I had to just cut those relationships. And some of them have re-emerged in a healthier way, which is great. And some of them even come to yoga classes and they're fully interested in that. But to move beyond those really toxic habits, I needed to break away. And that resulted in a little bit of alone time. But I think that's good for us as well. As much as we need conscious community, if you're feeling that your tribe, your people really aren't supporting you in evolving and expanding and really shining from your fullest potential, it's worth just, if they're not going to support your change, your growth, sometimes you got to end. You got to have those breakups, those conversations, huh?
I think it's massively important that we consciously audit our community, our friends and family to a certain extent, because by studying Stephen Porges's work, I know I talked about it on your podcast, stuff like that, with polyvagal theory and so forth, now we know that if you're not getting messages and posturing of safety amongst your friends and family, then that triggers off a whole lot of chemistry, and your hormone systems go off on fight and flight straight away, just because of the posturing, just because of the lack of smiles, the lack of laughter, the lack of everything, touch, anything that sends a message to your nervous system that this is a safe place. And so I think we have to look at that. And if we got friends or family members that are always negative, always putting us down, man, your health requires you now And I'm not calling for divorce. I'm not calling. I mean, I'm calling for conversation.
Totally.
That's
conversation.
all. But don't kid yourself that I'll just deal with it. This like we said before, how it merges into your system. The what was the word we used? The transmission. The energy will go in.
Oh yeah.
It's interesting times, man.
I also do think with our practice we can cultivate the ability to be with anyone and kind of blast through, like do the eye gazing, like kind of cut straight to the truth of who we truly are. And that's a great practice as well.
Beautiful.
It's easier when we got the people we're vibing with and we're getting along and it's supporting our nervous system like you were talking about. It feels good. Yet it's also an interesting experiment and great practice to be around those people that challenge us and we don't see eye to eye on a literal level. Like it's hard to maintain eye contact. That's one way to sit in the fire we were talking about before, rather than just avoiding those tricky conversations and people that irritate the shit out of us, practicing to like be with them and just love the shit out of them and like maintain eye contact, keep opening the heart. It's a fierce practice, but it's a good one.
And that's a skilled practice, I think. Like, and I 100% agree with you. And I think that's where the spiritual journey kicks in with an awareness and a consciousness of entering the fire. But I think if you're doing that unconsciously, not having the skills to do it, just suppressing yourself. But I think audit and make sure that you're getting enough support. And then, like you said, with the people that aren't going to change and are negative, then that becomes a spiritual journey for you, like it is. And then, like you said, my advice would be get your book because it's full of advice how to deal with that sort of stuff. And then, utilize it as a practice. What a beautiful practice. Because it's going to be all... putting your stuff onto there. What is it? Projecting. It's all going to be projections. It's like a ping pong match. Them projecting you projecting into them.
Yeah, and I found that with people I dearly care for, people very close, family members and so on, that aren't changing or aren't doing the healthiest things. And I used to really come onto them real hard because I just care for them. I want them to feel good. I want them to make positive changes. And then I just realized that was creating further divide. That was getting me wound up and not well, and it caused friction in the relationship. And then it was my practice to just accept them as they are, love them, and that has created more inspiration and more change. Because there's nothing worse than someone preaching and pushing and coming onto you in that kind of way. I know we're doing a bit of that right now, but you can turn it off. I mean, but you know what I mean? Like there's a stronger transmission we can do that's compassionate, that's listening, because most people just want to be heard. And when you're just yapping, pushing, it pushes them more into denial and shitty behaviors.
And I think the difference is those people that are preaching, they need you to believe their belief so they can believe their belief. You know what I mean? It's just not solid. Whereas where you're at and where you got to, it's you're embodied with it now, and now there's a transmission. Like you don't need to tell them; they'll observe because you're living it.
Right.
So it's a beautiful thing. But I think that it's very prevalent in the vegan community.
Right.
Unfortunately, that a lot of this preachiness and there's no discussion. There's what I mean. So, there's aspects of that community that need to evolve into a more. And I know. Then it's like but like we're defending the animals and things like that. Yeah, I know, but you'll do it better if you don't attack people.
Yeah.
If you just, and it's not just that community. There's plenty of them, but
pretty much every community I can think of, when there isn't a maturity developed behind it. It hasn't been done for the years to develop the insight and the compassion and the broader vision, because it does seem so right. And when you're feeling very right and everyone else is wrong, you want to try to make everyone else in your tribe as well. I get it. Yeah. And I've done it as well. I've definitely done it. But it's not good for us when we're doing it, and it's not good for anyone else. It doesn't help anyone grow. I really don't think that.
No.
It seems to inflame the divide even more.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to shit can vegan movement. I've got a vegan restaurant here. You know, I mean, but it's a very passionate movement.
Yes,
very passionate, and but like, man, that's happening everywhere nowadays. There's so much divide on politics and everything, especially in America, and it ain't going to end well. We have to be able to just get our message across in a loving way.
Yeah, it's been a great practice for me as well. That's one that's been actually pretty challenging for me during the American elections, which Australia kind of jumped on that bandwagon. I think the whole world did. And I've had some dear friends that went down a particular fanatic route, and it was an interesting practice of when we would catch up and it would inevitably come up in conversation. And the kind of tribal reaction in my nervous system would be to flare up and defend my opinion, which is valid, and then they do the same thing, and then we don't get anywhere. It's this kind of toxic tribalism. And I found it to be a great practice of just listening, giving them time just to let it all out, just tell it all, and keep eye contact and do my breath work and just love them, and then talk. And it really helps me tease apart the reactivity that's there. It's definitely there. But when I just give it a moment of like breath and love and let it go, it really helps the conversation.
Were you always that way? Because I've known you for a while now. I've never heard a negative word come out of your mouth, man. I've never heard you
comes
talk.
out.
Does it? I thought it must.
It definitely, and you've heard it. It's come out with you. I think we're just at a similar plane where it comes out in a way that maybe doesn't seem quite as negative as it could, if that makes sense. But it definitely comes out, and I definitely feel negative at times, and I definitely voice it when it's there. But thank you. I appreciate that. But now it's there, and it's right. It's a mirror in your reflection, you know. Truly, get it out. COVID.
I think it's this.
Yeah.
I think I got powder.
Yeah, got a chunk.
All right, man.
Yeah, but thank you.
Anything else you want to say?
I think we said a lot. I think that was pretty robust, pretty full. Yeah, I enjoyed that.
Yeah, I want to get you back on as a semi-regular and talk about it, because what I'm trying to do here is bring people on and filter it in a way. I only want to bring people on that I know are really doing it, you know, because I mean, I know people that are talking a good talk, but I also know what's going on behind the scenes. You know what I mean? And you can, it's important to me that this stay, because I really revere health and that journey and that the effort it takes and the vulnerability. And when you're vulnerable, you're open to information. And there's a lot of charismatic people out there that are just saying stuff, but they're just taking a bit from here, a bit from there, a bit from there, and they're all sound bites and they sound cool, and it's great. But we don't need that at the moment, you know. Yeah,
I feel you on that. The authenticity is, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, you have to live it and embody it, and that's what it's about. And be honest. And man, you're a humble guy, like your crew, like Ram Das and all those guys. That seems to be a necessity to get through this eye of a needle. You seem to have this humility.
Oh, yeah.
And it also seems to be some sort of pearl that comes out of the practice of just letting all the, you know, illusionary stuff in your mind and actions just burn away. You seem to be left with this powerful humility. It's all heart-centric stuff, isn't it?
It is. I mean, there's just nothing to hold on to, really, nothing to be arrogant about. And again, so grateful for those teachers in which they just ooze that humility. And it's great to have those role models, because we need them. We need these wise elders to help show the way, not just how to do it in a 12-week quick fix, but how do we how do we create these changes over the long term?
Yes. Yes, great. And the beauty of it is people can just jump online and listen to some Ram Dass right now. I mean,
yeah, totally.
Do yourself a favor. I mean, some of those conversations he's had, they're funny, they're interesting stories, and they're just very simple, powerful truths, aren't they? I mean, he's just got that talent for talking about life situations that we're all experiencing and then just bringing light to it.
Yeah. So many great teachers: Jack Cornfield, Lama Surya, Sharon Salzberg, Roshi Joan Halifax. Been diving into her work a lot. It's a very, very rich community, and again, the core quality that I find most beautiful is that humility. Beautiful, charismatic people, but it's not that. It's this wisdom merged with compassion and humility. Yeah,
and there's a gentleness there, isn't there? Which is interesting, because I think that's what people can't fake. You know, there's like there's a gentleness that comes from doing the work. Yet there's a fierceness there as well, if need be.
Yeah.
And that's what I like to see in people's evolution, is that they can adapt to the situation, but then move through it. And like, there is a time to be angry, there's a time to be this and that, but then that time will fade, and you must be able to transition back into that stillness of the heart.
Yeah.
So there's the practice. But hey, so you got 2 podcasts: Stuart Watkins podcast, and then one with Joe.
Yoga Heart Mind is
Yoga
with
Heart
Joe.
Mind,
and that's really focused on the integration piece. If you're interested in just elaborate practices on the sticky mat, it's not really that. Go to like glow.com or something like that, which is great. This is more the conversations, the integrative practices. How can we bring all this into action, into conversation, into life? And there's family practices. How can we integrate this with kids? I do quite a few practices with the kids in there as well, and have some fun with that. And then the meditation piece as well, which is huge.
Amazing. Great. And the book's going well. Where can you get the book?
You can get that.
You can get it here.
You can get it
to
here.
our bookshop.
And all around the place, but you can just hop straight to my website, stuartwatkins.org.
Great.
Yeah,
epic. There. Thanks, brother.
Yeah, thank you so much. Really great to go deep with you always.
Yeah, man. Do it again.
Yeah.
Take care.
Thanks, everyone.